Okie doke. So I would like this to be interactive a bit. So my talk isn't very long, but we'll get started. So my job is to do the USRowing Medical Committee update. And my name is Kate Ackerman, and I am the chair of our medical committee. So just to walk you through our year a little bit, poor Joe, I spelled her name wrong, Hannafin. This is our medical committee as of January of this past year. And so Joe has been our chair for many years. She's an orthopedic surgeon at HSS. Many of you know her, I imagine. And so she stepped down as chair earlier this year. And then in February, I was voted in as chair and Pete Wenger was voted in as vice chair. But to go over our committee, this year we've been working together with Joe and then Matt Collins, who a lot of you know, he was the Olympic doctor. He's based in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Dr. Chris Carlson, who is up in New Hampshire at Dartmouth. So Joe is an orthopedist, Matt is a family practice doctor, and Chris is a family practice doctor. Then I am part of the group. I'm in Massachusetts, I'm in Boston. I'll tell you a little bit more about me. Eric Carson is an orthopedic surgeon and he is in St. Louis. Pete Wenger, a lot of you know, he is in Princeton. He's a family practice doc. And then Cindy Chang, also a family practice doc. So more about me, just to kind of give you a lens in case you have any questions for me later. These are the different things I'm involved in. And so I'm happy to help with any of these connections that I have. So I'm a former national team lightweight rower. I'm a recreational masters rower. And what I mean by that is I'm not a diehard who gets up at 4:30 every day to go row. Sometimes I row, sometimes I don't. I do the Head of the Charles, I do San Diego Crew Classic. I'm in pretty good shape, but if it's a choice of getting a bunch of work done or seeing my kids or I don't know, happy hour, I might not go rowing, just to put it into a context. I'm trained in internal medicine, endocrinology, and sports medicine. And I'm an associate professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School. I am the director of the WUSI Female Athlete Program at Boston Children's. And the reason it's called the WUSI Female Athlete Program is last year, we were really fortunate to be brought in as part of a Human Performance Alliance. And so this is really an opportunity that we can use with US Rowing to be doing more research because our generous donors, Joseph Tsai and Clara Wu, gave $220 million to 6 institutions collectively to do human performance work. So they really want us to be studying, kind of pushing the boundaries of human frontier work based on elite athletes so that then we can disseminate a lot of health and performance information. So I bring this up because our program got $15 million. Somebody I'm mentoring over at Stanford and their female athlete program got 5. So we have at least $20 million to play with for female athletes in general. So we can be doing more of that with our female rowers. And then just in general, we have 220 million devoted to elite athletes in science that we can be studying. So there's ways that we could apply this for performance metrics with US Rowing for the women and the men and the para athletes, which I think is pretty awesome. So I've been very involved with that. I'm on the leadership council for that. I'm also a member of the World Rowing Medical Commission. So Joe Hannafin and I are both on that. She's a senior member. I'm a more recent, a few years ago, co-opted member, specifically for my endocrine background and to help with a lot of the transgender and differences in sexual development policies. So I'm happy to take questions about that. But I do also cover events as part of the medical group. So for example, last year I was at U23s and Richiche as the World Rowing Doctor. I am the co-chair of the newly formed US Olympic and Paralympic Women's Health Working Group. And I'm really happy about this as well, because in the past, we didn't have a super tight relationship between US Rowing and the USOPC. There wasn't a really cohesive medical network there. And that has really improved a ton. So in 2020, early 2020, just as the pandemic was starting, Dr. John Finoff was made the head of sports medicine for the USOPC, and he's done a really great job of being inclusive. This past fall, they held a virtual summit of sorts. It was a couple of days, and it basically brought all the different doctors and different medical providers who are associated with different teams and the different national governing bodies. So all of our different sports, brought them together for a 2-day group of lectures and interactions. And so now as part of the women's health group, we really have the opportunity to improve the healthcare of our female athletes throughout the country but we're also combining and doing work with the Australian Institute of Sport, the English Institute of Sport in Canada, just to improve knowledge and do better health monitoring. So I'm happy to get input from people about what they want studied, and I can tell you more about that as well. And then I have various roles with the International Olympic Committee. So I speak at the Advanced Team Physician course that we do every year. So I've done that a couple of times. Most recently, it was in Istanbul at the end of October, early November of this year. And then we also do an injury and illness prevention conference. So I was on the planning committee for that. Unfortunately, it got moved a few times. So this year it landed on Thanksgiving and it was in Monaco. But that's really a cool opportunity where we get all these different countries together, different people providing healthcare to their teams, all different types of teams, and kind of come up with best practices and share a lot of information. And then I'm on the Women's Health and REDS working group with the IOC, so relative energy deficiency in sport, and then again, advocating for female athlete health. And finally, I'm part of the International Testing Agency. So when you hear about testing, when people are traveling and getting tested at these international events, so whether it's juniors or it's seniors or it's the Olympics, it is no longer in the hands of World Rowing. So FISA is now known as World Rowing. So it's no longer in the hands of World Rowing. It's now been taken over by the ITA to do TUE review and to be in charge of all of that. So, you know, I know there was a lot of information recently about kettle borch and getting tested and those things. It's really the ITA who decides who's going to get tested. So it takes the pressure off a little bit of World Rowing. And then for my role in ITA, I'm not deciding who should get tested. That's when somebody sends in a TUE. We have people from other countries. So if somebody has a TUE in there, say they're from Turkey, I might review their TUE. So I'm not biased. It's not my sport and it's not my nation. And we can see if the TUE is reasonable. So I can also help you all with TUE policies and keeping you up to date with WADA recommendations, et cetera. Oh, sorry, one more thing. This is not as much medically related, but I'm on the Chief High Performance Officer Selection Committee because we really wanted to have a thorough and broad committee. So I'm representing from sort of the sports science and medical aspect. And I would say the committee is a pretty good group of people who've really been really thoughtful in reviewing the applications, reviewing the letters of recommendation, and talking about the future of US rowing, because I think there's a lot of opportunity to really move in a very positive direction. So what does our US Rowing Medical Committee do? Well, we do medical care locally. So I'm in Boston. I take care of the athletes who are training in Boston. I take care of the para athletes. And then you have people like Pete Wenger who are in Princeton and taking care of the women's team. You have people like Cindy Chang who are out in Oakland taking care of the men's team. And then we also consult for docs and athletes who are not local. So if you're not training in one of those locations, you know, you might be somewhere closer to Joe or to Chris or to Matt, or you might not be near any of those places. And so then we are also kind of touching base with people, finding resources for athletes in other parts of the country. We obviously cover events. So we have the whole calendar of the different events for the international competitions. And we also cover events like trials. Sometimes we might go even broader and do things like nationals, but mostly it's national team issues. So it's trials and it's the international competitions. We develop policies. So obviously we did a ton with the COVID policies. We had to keep modifying those. We had to go with the latest science, keep up to date. But we do other policies as well. So I'll touch on those. We develop protocols similar to policies, protocols, so things like lightweight protocol. We often do athlete screening. So it might be that we're doing pre-participation exams for a bunch of people. We also might be screening the EKGs. So we do have Dr. Aaron Bagish, who is at Mass General. He's a sports cardiologist. He is the final say on all the EKGs that athletes are required to submit, and he can help facilitate getting further testing if that's warranted. But we do, cursory review of those things, and we do the regular athletic screening as needed. We review the TUEs that are coming through for the US, and we're happy to answer TUE questions. If somebody might write to US Rowing, and that gets sent to us to just double check to make sure it's getting answered correctly regarding TUE questions. We obviously get random medical questions. So there are ways that you can just email the committee, and that's going to get forwarded to us to help guide you. Research. So we do think that research is important. I'd say with our changing in our group, and I'll get to that again a little bit later of how we're expanding our group. We think research is really important for multiple reasons. So as part of World Rowing, there's been a group of us who've done a lot that's been published in the last 2 years in the British Journal of Sports Medicine regarding rowing. And so Fiona Wilson of Ireland has really led that charge. She's a PT and a PhD, talking about low back pain, how we define it, how we're treating it, what are some preventive measures, what do athletes know about it? And we're really trying to expand that. So talking about injury and illness prevention for rowing, we've just started a new project at World Rowing looking at injury and illness prevention for beach sprints in coastal, because that's a totally different discipline that's going to be getting really big and very likely could be an Olympic event. So we think it's important to stay current, but also to keep learning more and to be studying athletes and to be studying our sport so we can give you best practices and we can try to minimize injury and illness. We do a lot of lectures and a lot of education. Some of us have been doing talks that have been recorded throughout the pandemic and doing all the online teaching, the online lecture series with US Rowing. We also do a lot of lectures at the American College of Sports Medicine, or like I said, the Advanced Team Physician course, and a lot of different organizations. Some of us talk to your clubs, and we're always here to try to help get more information out and guide our coaches and our athletes. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Joe and I are both on the US Rowing, are representing US Rowing on the World Rowing Medical Commission. So here's Pete and me at U23s. Pete was the doctor for U23s. I was the World Rowing doctor. Pete and I are partners in crime as the chair and vice chair. We get along great. It's really nice to have such good communication. And there, some of the practices in the Czech Republic were not ideal in terms of what they were doing overall at U23s. And so it was nice to have a friend there to double check and to assist and just be able to bounce ideas. And I think that's the nice thing is as our group is getting bigger, there are more resources, and the doctors on the World Rowing Committee get along great. It's also nice to have so many of these doctors that are coming in to have such a good network of fun people in our US Rowing Committee as well. Sometimes we do random things. We're not always just the doctors. So here I built a fort at beach sprints because we weren't allowed to have tents for some reason. So basically we put up these gates and like I borrowed some stuff so that at least had a fort so that we could be out of the sun during the events. But, you know, we always kind of consider ourselves as like the other assistant to the team manager. No job is too big or too small. We're there to be gophers and really just help the athletes be as successful as they can be and not have to worry about silly things. And then sometimes we get together and speak at conferences and get to let off some steam. So this is Cindy Chang and I were at a sports conference in Napa. That was rough. We did that in October. So most of this last year and a half obviously has been about COVID. We spent so much time talking about COVID protocols and updating those and changing them. We've all been exhausted as medical providers because through all of this, we've all been working and seeing patients and been in the hospital. And then every other week, we're also on Zoom calls together, talking about the different issues that were coming up for the athletes at the training center or not at the training center, trying to prep and get ready for trials. Pete's going to talk about this later today, but basically there were the US rowing trials were the first Olympic trials to actually have a COVID protocol. So we were the first trials that first NSR. And because of that, the USOPC learned a lot from what we did and copied a lot of what we did. So I'm proud to say that all that time that was spent working on that was good. Oh, sorry. Somebody asked, can you give Joe's name again? Joe Hannafin. And then someone said, I mean, Pete and Pete Wanger. Okay. Sorry. That was probably asked like 20 minutes ago, but now I'm looking at the chat. So anyway, the Corona stuff, we all know, we're all sick of it. It's still here. There's another wave. We have to continue to be careful. We have to continue to follow our local procedures and stay current with that. We as a committee will keep updating as things change and make sure that that is on the website. Most importantly, you need to follow your current guidelines for the community that you're living in and still be vigilant. But Pete will talk to you a lot about that this afternoon. Other things. So again, we did a lot of guidelines, a lot of protocols, a lot of adjustments. We were doing the same thing on the world rowing side. So we had to develop different protocols for the different events. And then obviously there are the politics of what country you're in and how closely it's being followed and how much control you can have over it. So that's been interesting. And I think overall, both World Rowing and US Rowing have done a really good job with that. I think we're all pretty confident that we should be following the science. So we stick up for things if we see that people aren't following protocols, because the protocols had a lot of time and effort put into them. And, we're part of the whole process too. We're getting tested everywhere we go nonstop. So we feel you. Then we get to the lightweight protocol. So in 2020, this was when the protocol was introduced based on the support of most of the scholastic rowing organizations. And this was also based on the US Rowing's lightweight task force. And so the idea was, after a lot of consideration, after a lot of input, US Rowing decided not to offer youth lightweight events at US Rowing run regattas. And this was including the US Rowing Youth National Championships and US Rowing's Youth Regional Championships. So at first we really said, we want to make sure that athletes aren't losing weight. If they are adolescents, we don't want them losing weight to become a lightweight, because they are supposed to be growing, and we don't want to inhibit their growth. We don't want to be enhancing or being the cause of eating disorders. So we don't want to be contributing to these body image issues and eating disorder issues. So this is not the time to become a lightweight. And then after kind of just looking at the lightweight protocol and trying to get people not to lose weight, it was just decided, you know what, we're not doing this lightweight thing anymore for the junior level. So nearly 75% of lightweight participants fell into the under 17 age category when they kind of trialed and looked at this in 2020. And so in 2021, US Rowing introduced several U17 events at the Youth National Regatta. And going forward in 2022, there's going to be U17 and U15 opportunities that'll be integrated into the national regional regattas. So the idea is to do it based off of age rather than looking at weight. And going forward also with the collegiate level, we're just trying to be more helpful for the different colleges. People have been reaching out to us who have lightweight programs. They might have a coach who's come in who's not as familiar with lightweight. They want to know best practices about determining who should be a lightweight. If somebody is close to being a lightweight, is it safe for them to lose a couple pounds? How would they do that? So we're trying to be very proactive. I'd say much of our committee is former lightweights, so we're very familiar with the topic. We've all had to lose weight before. We all know what this is about because we've lived it. And then we have other experts on the committee who weren't lightweights, but they have treated a ton of them. And so I think we have a pretty broad group that's familiar with the topic. Another topic that has come up this year is the transgender and the differences in sexual development protocol. So as a lot of you know, this past the month of November, the IOC came out with its rules about what we should be doing about transgender and DSD inclusion. And they're not actually rules. They're basically guidelines saying this is hard and we want to defer to the sport. So to be honest, it was a bit of a turf. It was a punt to say every sport needs to figure this out for themselves, because there are probably different issues that come up with each sport. So here you have Ralph Hubbard, who's a power lifter from New Zealand, who transitioned from being assigned male at birth to a female, so transitioned hormonally and identified differently in her 30s, and then was able to compete at the Tokyo Olympics representing New Zealand as a power lifter in her 40s. So there was a lot of press about her, and she changed in terms of her ranking. She wasn't quite as competitive as a male athlete, and then was very competitive as a female athlete. And she transitioned much later in her life, in her 30s. So this was a very controversial participant. And then you have a completely different case. You have Caster Semenya. So Caster Semenya has DSD, a difference in sexual development. They used to be called intersex. And Caster was assigned female at birth. Caster thought that she was female. Caster identifies as female, but Caster has a Y chromosome. And so when she came onto the scene in 2009 at her first major international event, she was amazingly fast and really caught the attention of the world because of how fast she was. But unfortunately, the way her situation was handled has been really tough, because here she was, a young athlete competing as a female, identifying as a female. And then everybody said, wait, who is this person? What is this situation? And she went through a lot of testing. A lot of her medical information became public. And now there are a lot of questions about if somebody has a Y chromosome, but they have some androgen insensitivity, meaning their receptors don't identify all of that testosterone, or if they're assigned at birth because of ambiguous genitalia. There's so many different things that can cause DSD. How do we decide who gets to be in the female category? So this is a very complicated topic, and people have really strong feelings about it. I've heard lots of different arguments. I'm asked to speak about this all over the place. And basically where we're left from the IOC is saying we need to be inclusive, we need to be respectful, we also need to be fair, and we need to be safe, and we need data. Well, that sounds great. Of course we do. Part of the problem is we don't have a lot of data. So if you're trying to look specifically at a sport and base decisions on data, we don't have that information. It's not like we have 100 transgender rowers to study to see how fast they are, or that we have 100 DSD rowers to see how fast they are. So we're having to make a lot of assumptions. We're having to make a lot of extrapolations from other situations. So people in the military who have transitioned, or looking at testosterone levels and comparing results. So it's a complicated topic, but where we are with World Rowing currently is that our rule is that somebody needs to, if they are male to female transition, they need to be on testosterone lowering medication, and their testosterone level needs to remain under 5 for at least a year, and it needs to stay that way. So there's a lot of questions about how often they need to get tested. Will there be surprise testing? They have to pay for it. There's going to be a lot of sticky things coming up, but that is the rule that's come out of World Rowing. And that applies for somebody who's transgender. Also for somebody, if they're DSD, they also need to have their testosterone level below 5. So that's the rule now, but all of this, and the IOC is saying this too, all of this will change as we have more information available. So we're actually developing a study at Boston Children's with multiple centers looking at kids who transition. So maybe the answers will be completely different for somebody who transitions and has transitions before puberty. So basically has pubertal blockade, then they have hormonal suppression, and then they have their gender affirming hormones. So if you've got somebody who's transitioning from male to female, they have testosterone blockage, and then they're given estrogen. They might go through adolescence and through puberty in a much different way, and they might have completely different outcomes compared to somebody who went through puberty with testosterone and then did the transition later. We just have to find out more. We're very lucky to have someone named Dr. Joanna Harper on our committee. She is transgender, and she's a transgender advocate, and she is a scientist. So she's really reasonable in terms of helping guide these policies and doing the research on this. Okay, so switching gears. The other thing is our team coverage. So this year we had Matt Collins go to the Olympics. He was the team doctor in Japan. We had Pete Wenger go to U23s in the Czech Republic. We had Dr. Chris Carlson go to juniors in Bulgaria. Eric Carson was going to go, but he couldn't make it. So thankfully, Chris stepped up to do it, even though Chris has had many trips to Bulgaria, just like Eric. We keep joking that they should both get condos over there. And then I got to go to beach sprints. It was a tough job, but somebody had to do it. So I got to go to Portugal. And I think beach sprints are going to be amazing in the future. It's a really fun event. We have some people like Dan Garbett who are leading the way in the US about beach sprints. And so he was one of the coaches. He's extremely enthusiastic. He can tell you a lot about it because he grew up on the Jersey Shore doing beach sprints before he was a traditional rower at Princeton. And this is likely to become an Olympic event. And so it's important for us to know more about the sport. I encourage people to try it. One of the arguments was about taking lightweights off of the Olympic docket. Was we needed the idea behind that was that, you know, and I don't have a political stance on this, but basically the idea was they didn't want to have a weight category. They thought that there were too many events already for rowing. And then the IOC decided to get rid of this lightweight category, but World Rowing wanted to keep some kind of rowers in there. We want to keep as many people participating as possible. So by introducing beach sprints and coastal, then potentially there could be different types of people that would be participating, and there might be more access to different countries. So island countries who might not have flat water available, but they have the ocean around them. So it is likely to join the Olympic competitive event list very soon. So we're going to be growing that sport, and there'll be coverage there as well. We also think it's important finally to have some medical committee improvement with feedback. So we've all traveled with the teams. We hear different things about what people want. We might hear different things about how the doctor acted or how they interacted with the staff or what the athletes were looking for, but there hasn't been anything formal before. And so we developed a survey, and we absolutely want people to respond to this. So this is going to go out before the end of the year. It's going to go to everybody who was on a junior trip, U23s, the Olympic team, the staff. We want feedback so we can get better, and we want concrete examples, and it's our job to be accountable. So we want to hear from you. You know, tell us what you think, what we did right, what we did wrong, be specific, and we'll try to get better. And then as of now, so Matt Collins stepped off the committee. We have Dr. Jo Hannafin, again, I spelled her name wrong, I'm so sorry, as our emeritus chair. I am now the chair. Pete Wenger's the vice chair. Eric Carson and Chris Carlson and Cindy are still with us, but we thought it was really important to expand the network. This is something that some of us have been saying for such a long time, because we all started years ago by somebody on the committee saying, hey, you seem like you could be helpful. You seem enthusiastic. You've got an MD. Yeah, sure, join us. And it just isn't really fair to not have a formal process, see what kind of talent's out there, see who wants to be involved, and give them the opportunity. So this fall, we had applicants. In August, we had people apply. And then this fall, we went through those applications and we interviewed a whole bunch of people. And we had a really thorough process. And I'm really excited about the people that are joining our network. So to introduce you to our network, we have Dr. Catherine Deck from Virginia, and she has traveled with the Paralympic team before. So broadly with para in general, but therefore she got exposure to para rowing as well. We have Dr. Hank Pelto. He's in Seattle, and he's worked with the UW athletes for years. He's no longer at UW, but he's still in Seattle, and he's been fantastic with the rowing teams out there. His athletes love him. Dr. Matt Preventure. So Matt has rowed for a long time. He was rowing back in the 90s, and he is an orthopedic surgeon who for a while was the head of the Mass General sports medicine group. And now he's out in Colorado at Steadman Hawkins. And so he's at, or I guess it's now just Steadman Clinic. So he's in Colorado. He works with the US ski team, but he absolutely has a passion for rowing. And he was really excited to get back into the rowing groove and be with the rower people again. Katie Rizzoni. So she is a pediatrician and an adult medicine doctor. So she's med peds. And all of these people have sports fellowships. And so Katie is in Rochester. So she rowed in college. She's very involved in a lot of the sports medicine organizations in the US. She's very interested in para. And so she's another great person that I've known for a bunch of years. And then finally, Dr. Ashley Warren. And this is somebody that none of us really knew because, you know, we didn't have a connection. And that's the whole point, is sending out these applications, sending out a call to see what kind of talent is out there. And so Ashley's terrific. She's in Indiana. She also is a rower, has been taking care of rowers in her community. And we wanted to find people throughout the country. So these people are all over the place, which is really helpful. So now we have more resources. And again, there were some people we had to turn down. There were people that didn't seem as committed or didn't have the right training, or they hadn't taken their sports boards yet. We really wanted to get solid people so that we're really comfortable referring to each other. And everybody here brings a little something different. They all want to get involved in different ways. Some want to do research, some want to focus on a specific population. Everybody seems like a team player, so we're excited to bring them all in. And then we have to remember we have so many other people. And this page probably isn't doing it justice, but of course we have Mark Nowak, who's been involved in athlete wellness for years. He's in Princeton. He just is working nonstop for our athletes as a PT. We have Deirdre out in California, often working with the men's team. I looked high and low for a good picture of Katie. I figured I'd have one from one of the many trips we've been on together, but she keeps a low profile. So Katie's also in New Jersey. She's a PT who's traveled a lot with the junior team, U23s, And she does a terrific job as well. Jeff Keller is in Boston, and so he works a lot with the para teams. And then we have our dietitian. So Liz Busco is our head dietitian for US Rowing. And then Laura Moretti-Reese is an RD here in Boston who's traveled some with the team and works with a lot of the Boston athletes. Another PT is Riko Takahashi. I could not find a picture of her, but she's helped us on trips as well as with local athletes. So she's been terrific as well. But we have more people and we have more opportunities. So if people have questions or they need resources, we're expanding and we're finding our special people. So we have people that we refer to sports psychology. USOPC has done a great job in the last year and a half of really building the sports psychology network. We know that we need to have more mental health support. The USOPC did a survey after the Tokyo Olympics of all of the Olympic athletes, and the psychological needs were really high. Almost 50% of the athletes said they were struggling mentally. So we know that we've got to broaden that. We do have some psychologists right now that we refer to. It's not surprising. Everybody is super booked, but we're still squeezing people in. As I mentioned, we have sports cardiology with Erin Bagish. We also have Megan Waspy, who helps us a lot with sports cardiology. Athlete health and performance monitoring. So this is something a lot of us are really passionate about and think that we can really improve moving forward. Our high performance applicants, so the chief high performance officer applicants, also think this is important. So I'm excited about that. Because there are people like Luke Pryor who are at University of Buffalo who've been trying to get this off the ground, who've been trying to help figure out what labs could be tested, how we would use those in a positive way, what other performance metrics, what other wearable technology that we can use. Obviously, there are a lot of different things that people use. They might use Whoop, they might use, their heart rate monitors, they might use other types of heart rate variability monitors. They might, who knows? Everybody's got their thing. Some of it is being used pretty consistently. Some of it isn't. It varies at the different training sites. We want to help with that. Some of us do have exercise phys and performance backgrounds and want to help improve that. So that's huge on our agenda this year. So again, bringing people like Luke Pryor from the exercise physiology standpoint. And we have this research money with WUSI so that we can actually spend some money on it. This is an area, sure, we have to fundraise, but we already have some money available, which is terrific. And then strength and conditioning. So like Pete Wenger has really helped in Princeton trying to bring in a strength and conditioning coach to work with the athletes to make sure they have really good technique. Not everybody knows how to do everything. This is why we have a whole community of people trying to improve the athlete performance and health and welfare, because everybody's got a niche. Strength and conditioning, exercise phys, sports psych, coaching, medical care. We can all be working together to just elevate and have our athletes be more competitive and better taken care of. Other future directions. So we are writing up committee bylaws and a charter. It's kind of crazy that the US Medical Committee hasn't had this. So it's not just going to be an old boys or old girls network. And we also want to make sure that it's clear what our responsibilities are so that we're delivering and you all can hold us to it. We think we need more representation on the medical committee. So we absolutely want to bring in athlete reps. I've already spoken to some folks to ask how we do that. What is the process? How do we bring in our athlete reps so that people know that this is an opportunity for them to join, and people who are interested in being part of it can be in the pool of people. We need other specialists. So I want to bring in our dietitian. We all think that we should have our dietitians and our sports psych and our exercise phys people present at these meetings, and they can have a more formal role. So we're going to add people to the committee. And we certainly need more diversity, just like US Rowing does in general. And I think we're getting there. But if you notice, we just added a whole bunch of white people to our committee. It's good that we added men and women, but we need other applicants and we need other specialists and we need other backgrounds from different communities, different races, different cultures, so that we are really thinking of things that might not pop into our heads first. We need these different perspectives. We need more protocols and info for our US Rowing members. So World Rowing is expanding their website. It needs work. US Rowing is expanding their website. It needs work, but we're all going to try to be part of the solution. I think it's easier to disseminate information if people know where to get it. And if we can keep being consistent about putting up our protocols, putting the latest and greatest information up there. If you go to the website, you can see that all of the latest protocols about COVID have been updated. We are endorsing the right articles in our minds, using the best and latest published practices, and then tweaking them for rowing as needed. So that part's really good, but there are other issues that need to get addressed. And so in concert with what we're doing at the USOPC, we're going to be disseminating that to US Rowing. And if people have questions or they have ideas of different types of protocols or topics they want us to address, please let us know. I'm excited that we have more connection now with the USOPC. It's really refreshing to have this really open relationship. Dr. Finoff and his whole team have been so open about what can we do? How can we be more integrated? How can the different sports communicate and learn from each other more? How do we expand our network? You know, there might be a doctor from, say, USA Swimming who is fantastic, and there's a sports doctor in a region where we don't have a rowing specific doctor, but we can educate them a bit about the sport and they can be a resource. So we're making those connections now. We're meeting quite frequently to get to know this whole national network of medical providers. We definitely want to be doing more assistance with sports science, like I said, and I'm excited that our finalists for the high performance director are willing to do that, excited to do that, and see that we got to catch up in the US because it's happening in the other countries. They have this big entourage, this big sports science team. We might not have the same funding. We're not nationally funded in the same way some of these countries are, but we have the talent here and we have the interest. So it's really just about improving that communication and using those resources. So I'm excited that that's starting to happen. And we want to do more research. Again, I mentioned all those articles about low back pain, but there are other projects for sure. You know, training with women, training according to their menstrual cycle. There are people out there who say, oh yeah, we can absolutely do that. We already know it. We don't know it. It's important for women to be monitoring their own menstrual cycles so they can see how they feel at different times, or if they're eating enough to get their cycle. But we are not at the scientific level to say, absolutely, this is what you should do on day 17. So we think that's a fun area, an interesting area. We may be improving training by knowing more about human physiology in women. And there are other things that we can be studying in men as well. So just getting more research out there that we can really hone in on rowers. I think it's really important that our athletes know that we're here for you guys, you women, everybody. We're here because we want to communicate with you. We want to know what's going on. I don't want you to come into my office after you kind of kept quiet about something for 8 months that's bugging you. So we are private, you know, you can tell us anything. There's HIPAA rules about what we share. So if you have any questions or you just want resources, you let us know, because that's our job. Our job is to be accessible to the athletes. And we want to be able to share with you whatever resources we can. So just reaching out and ask what you need, you know, what's available where you are, how do you get certain things taken care of, who are the good PTs where you live, is there a massage therapist we think is good that we've worked with before? You know, we can help with that to the best of our ability. We'll share what we know. So that is literally all I'm going to say for now, because I want to open it for questions. You know, I don't know what people brought to this lecture, what they were interested in learning about. So I didn't think I should lecture at you for an hour, but instead be available to just bounce ideas off of, explain things. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Kate, I don't have a question, and maybe I'll just say something to maybe give people time to put in a question, but I do want to thank you. I feel like you covered a lot of pretty complex issues in a very digestible fashion. So thank you so much for putting this together, as it relates to, you know, lightweight. That's for a lot to understand why that decision was made. And I feel like you broke it. You know, what's going with.
Sorry, I think you're breaking up a little bit. It's either my computer.
How different countries, different sports are approaching it. Oh, I'm not saying anything that profound. It was me.
Did you ask me a question, or were you just saying I broke it down well?
No, I was just saying you broke it down really well. But yeah, no, for those that are on here, and I was also messaging with Sarah McAuliffe, our head of events, and we definitely want to push this recording out, because we think you presented a lot of really amazing information that the membership should be aware of.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So any questions for Kate, chat, Q&A, anything else you would like her to spend some more time on? Anyone? I see we have Dr. Wanger as a participant. Hi, Pete.
Pete's taking care of his kids, so he said his kids will be crawling on him and he might not be able to show his face.
That's okay.
Just full disclosure, but it's always good to have Pete backing me up.
Doesn't look like we have any questions. I am going to put, oh, we got one. We got one. Oh no, Pete, it's a jungle gym. Yes,
It's a jungle
been there.
Great.
Been there. Maybe throw in a couple dogs.
Yeah,
Who
exactly.
knows? Yeah. Who
Foreman
knows?
household.
Yeah. Great. Well, I think what I will do is I will put in, we do have our, end of presentation survey that also includes an opportunity for people to ask further questions if someone thinks of something later that they'd like to put in. So I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. For people anyone who wants to add anything. But Kate, thank you so much for putting that together. It was concise, it was clear. And again, you hit on a lot of things that a lot of people I think want to know about. So we will definitely be pushing the recording out to everybody. So thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Feel free to email anything if you have any questions going forward.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. All right, we're going to go ahead and end the session. We've got a couple some other great presentations. Jim Cooper is going to be talking about regatta preparation later today, and then our closing for convention is going to be Bruce Smith from Hydro talking about how to not only make your vision become a reality, but to get others to come with you. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But Dr. Ackerman, thank you so much for spending this morning with us, and have a great rest of your weekend.
You too. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone. Bye.